Good morning or good day. It is Thursday, and we are in August, although you wouldn't know it looking out of the window. The weather is not Augusty. In 2023, 17th in fact. I'm reading out of Eyes of Horus. She was a seer, and it is a life she lives here as Ra'ab, and Ra'ab is their son, the son of a priestess of Ra. And he is an heir to the Nomarch of the Oryx. And he grows up in a corrupt land devoted to the worship of Set, the Lord of Fear. When an adult he joins the conspiracy, but we are not at his adult life yet. We are in chapter 4, Maker of Amulets. Kias, that's his friend and sister. Kias and I often went to stay with Roidan, whose estate on the northern boundary of the nome was called Hotep Ra. He was our kinsman, and after father the most important noble of the Oryx. His wife had died before Kias was born, and he had a son called Hanuk, who was 4 years older than me, and a daughter who thought herself too grown up to join in our games. In spite of having a dead wife, Rodan was not solemn, like my father. He was so full of vitality that everyone felt twice as alive when they were in his company. Yet he was very wise and could always answer questions, even when they were the kind that most people didn't understand. Kias always took antelopes with her when she went away from home, but one day when we went to Hotep Ra, Niam forgot to pack him, and when Kias found he wasn't there, she made a tremendous fuss and refused to go to bed. I was cross with her because I was afraid that if Hanuk saw her behaving like this, that he might think we were both too young for him to play with. I was trying to make her be quiet when Hanuk came into the room. Kias was saying despairingly, "I won't go to bed without antelopes. Something horrid might happen to me, and he would be at home and not knowing anything about it." To my surprise, instead of being scornful, Hanuk sat down on the bed and got her to tell him all about antelopes. When she had finished, he said, "I used to have an antelope too. Only mine was alive in the daytime as well. She was a puppy when she first started being magical, coming with me into my dreams. Now she's old, and when she barks in her sleep, I think it's usually because she is chasing water rats or having a different sort of adventure that I don't remember being into." "Oh, I'm so glad you understand," said Kias. "Raab sometimes thinks I'm silly about antelopes. I will explain to father about him, and he will send someone to bring him here tomorrow." Kias began to look more cheerful. "But what shall I do tonight?" "I'll lend you my antelopes. She can sleep on your bed if you like. She snores rather, but it's quite a comforting sort of noise when you've got used to it." He went and fetched the dog, which was a black hound bitch, and Kias curled up quite happily as soon as it settled itself at her feet. Hanuk was my favorite person after Kias, and he and Roidan were much like brothers than father and son. He didn't have to divide everything into those that grown-ups must never be told, and those which they can be allowed to know about. He never seemed to worry about what an idea would sound like when he got it into words, and just said whatever occurred to him. So when we met Roidan, soon after leaving Kias, Hanuk told him all about antelopes. Roidan didn't seem to think it was silly either, and said that of course he would send a messenger to fetch the lion first thing in the morning. The three of us went and sat on the wall of the vineyard, swinging our legs and talking and eating grapes. "It's awfully kind to take so much trouble about antelopes," I said to Roidan. "How could I have possibly done anything else?" He answered in a surprised voice, "Antelopes is a very important person to Kias." I suddenly thought he might be thinking that Antelopes was a real lion that was pining for Kias, so I said diffidently, "Antelopes is only a wooden lion, you know. Kias only thinks he's real. Everything is real if you think it is, and everyone's reality is what they make it. But he's only wooden, and she thinks he's alive. Her thinking can't make any difference to his woodenness," I objected. Hanuk said firmly, "She doesn't think he's alive when he's only wood. She told me herself that it's only when she is asleep that he becomes the real antelopes." I wonder what made the dream antelopes come alive. I said. I did, replied Roydan unexpectedly. You have probably forgotten the last time she had a really bad nightmare was when she was here, nearly 2 years ago. I knew how horrid it was for her, because the same kind of thing used to happen to me when I was a child, and it happened to Hanuk too. Why did it? A child is only young away from Earth for a part of each night. That is, if you've gone quite a long way on a far journey. The rest of the time you can live in your real self, which isn't affected by the temporary inconvenience of being born and dying and being born again. In your real self you can do lots of important things. You can remember them sometimes, don't you, Ra'ab? I nodded, and he went on. Our real selves have enemies as well as friends, and those enemies often try to attack us while we are using our child's sleep body. For we are more vulnerable then, having for the moment forgotten how to use our full powers. That's why it's a nightmare. You're usually trying desperately to escape. You either want to get back into your real self, where we can cope with the attacker, or else into a down here body, where it can't reach you. He pointed across the vineyard to where a man was picking some of the ripest grapes. Suppose you were here alone, and that man suddenly ran at you with a knife to try to stab you, and suppose you knew that though I was out of sight, I was near enough to hear if you shouted for me. What would you do? I'd yell for you to come and help me. Exactly, and that's what you should do if you are attacked in sleep by something too strong for you to tackle alone. Call to a friend to come and help you. I made Anilops as a sort of permanent answer to such a call. Anilops has the instincts of a highly developed dog who would protect the one he loves from every kind of attack. He's quite strong enough to deal with most things which might try to harm Kias, but if something comes along that is too strong for him to tackle, he will let me know about it, just like a dog who barks for his master when he scents a leopard. Are nightmares always because an enemy is attacking you? No. In sleep, even more than when you are awake, your thoughts create the surroundings in which you live. Those surroundings are made of what you hope for and what you fear. That's one of the reasons why it's so important not to be afraid of things. Many of children's fears are born of stories told by ignorant grown-ups. These stories are intended to frighten them away from dangers, but often instead of protecting them, they lead to troubles more serious. For instance, Kias was often told by Niam not to climb the high wall beyond your garden. She disobeyed. So Niam told her that if she did it again, she would be bound to fall off and then would be a cripple and would have to spend the rest of her life in bed. Kias didn't climb on the wall again while she was awake, but she wanted to even more because it was forbidden. So she did climb on it when she was asleep. When she was Sorry, I have a little cat here. When she was walking along it, she suddenly remembered what Niam had said. She was frightened of falling, so she did fall. She had been told that if she fell, she would be a cripple, so she was a cripple. I found her lying at the bottom of the wall with her legs so twisted under her, she thought she couldn't walk, so suddenly she couldn't. I went to her and showed her how that thought could be broken, and she was well again at once. It was after this I made her an amulet in my name, so that when she was in trouble I would call to help her. I would be called to help her. What would have happened if you hadn't found her? Another of her friends would have gone to her. But suppose they hadn't. Well, either the thought would have lost its power as soon as she woke up, or she would have suffered nothing worse than the most unpleasant nightmare. Or else, though this would only happen to a person who has deliberately cut himself off from everyone with whom he had a link of true affection, Kias would have been so sure that she couldn't move her legs that her earth body would have been just as paralyzed as her sleep body. Why did you make her a protector in the shape of Anilops? The shape of that kind of amulet isn't important, nor does it much matter whether it has a physical counterpart or not. But with children it is usually better to choose a shape they associate with going to sleep. Hanuk had a dog which always slept in his room, so I made his protection amulet to look as much as possible like the dog. Kias loved Anilops, so I made her amulet in the shape of a wooden lion. I deliberately made him rather stiff in the joints so that she wouldn't confuse him with any real lions she might meet in her dreams. I thought amulets were things like beads or little ornaments made like some of the priest symbols, an eye of Horus or an ankh or a tet. They often are, but the value of an amulet is not in its shape, but in the power which is stored in it. You can store power almost as you store wine, sealed in an amulet until you need it. I said, Niam's sister, the one with a mole on her cheek, can put her hand on your forehead if you've got a headache and the pain goes away almost immediately. Is her hand a kind of amulet? We are all in some degree a channel for the life of Ptah, for if that channel were cut off, we should die. But some of us have been trained how to use more life to flow through us than we need for the use of our own body. Niam's sister must have had some of this training, though not as much as fully initiated healer priests. If healer priests stored up their power in lots and lots of amulets, would that be enough to last forever? No, for a while the source of life opens to a true priest is inexhaustible. An amulet can hold only so much power as was stored up in it. The making of real amulets is a difficult magic and in these days rare. Can you have killing amulets as well as healing ones? Asked Hanuk. Of course. No one has ever made a papyrus with only one side, and no force has been created which has no opposite. A papyrus can be used to scribe a blessing or a curse. So can power be used to heal or to destroy. Neither the papyrus nor the power in itself is good or evil. It is the means for which they are used which decides whether they are dedicated to Ra or to Set. Hanuk suddenly remembered he had promised to help a friend of his to make a fish trap, so he went off towards the river and left me alone with Roydon. I wish I'd thought of talking to you about this kind of thing before, I said. Ever since Nekbara told me about Mother, I wanted to be like her and follow Anubis. She went into a temple, but I don't think Father would let me be a priest, do you? I'm not really at all sure I want to be a priest. And anyway, I've soon got to go to the house of the captains and learn to be a soldier. Do you think it's wrong of me not wanting to be a priest? You can train your memory sufficiently not to be cut off from the source of your own wisdom and learn to be a soldier at the same time. But you couldn't lead the oryx into battle if you'd lived in a temple all your life. Your father has no other son, and when he joins your mother, you will be the Nomarch. One day you will know how important that is going to be. For the oryx is different to the rest of Egypt, because we are building for the future on the wisdom of the past. So, this is chapter 4. Chapter 5 is entitled The Asiatics, and I shall read that another time.